Shopkins, but I just needed a pencil case and I had an extra one of these, so that's what I grabbed out. This is the cute elastic that I use on the back, and it just zips open. It's lined with something cute, and it's filled with my colored pens. If you use a sketchbook or a notebook, you can see how it'll just slip right over and fit with it. So this is a smaller journal size. This is a traditional notebook size. Still works. You can go the long way, or I always did it this direction, like that. I've already prepped a bunch of fabric to make these bags. These are super speedy quick, and I tend to do similar color, like I'll do lots of bags that take black thread all at the same time, or all the bags that take blue thread, whatever. So today we're just going to do one little My Little Pony bag. I've pre-prepped it, so I'm going to tell you what size to cut your rectangles for making a bag this size that was perfect for pencils, paint brushes, or makeup brushes or crayons, that sort of thing. So these are 2 rectangles of your outer fabric, and they measure 4.5 by 9.5, and that half is for your seam allowance. So I have 2 of those and 2 fusible interfacings that I've already interfaced. So you're going to need 2 outer, 2 interfacing, and 2 lining that are 4.5 by 9.5. You'll need a zipper, a regular zipper. This is not, you don't need an invisible zipper. And because this is going to finish about 9 inches, you want at least a 9-inch zipper. You can have a longer zipper. It's always okay to be longer on something like this. You just don't want it to be shorter. So this, I'm just going to show you. I pulled out. Some people like to be super matchy-matchy. I think it's cute for the zipper to stand out. And so I'm just going to show you. I'm just going to put a couple like this just so you can see. There it is with lavender, which is fine, but not my favorite. There is baby blue in this, so you could go with the baby blue one. Bright green. So you can see there's lots of, this one's very colorful. You could even do orange. And a lot of times when I put these, when I did sell these, I would sell them with different color zippers. So they weren't all made with pink zippers or whatever. But you can see all of these colors would work fine on this bag. And I think I'm going to go with one of the really bright colors for this one. So the first thing you do is cut out your squares or your rectangles. Fuse on the interfacing to the right side of the fabric. And the next thing we're going to do is apply the zipper. So we have to pick out our zipper next. And you can see how my interfacing hangs off. That's actually, I'm going to true that up and make sure that they're even before I start stitching. And if you're really picky, you can like make your designs line up. I'm not going to worry about that. What I do want to pay attention to is what design is going to be on the top and what design is going to be on the bottom. So here's the top of the bag. Here's the bottom of the bag, and there's a seam at both places. One is at the zipper. So if you think you're only going to see half of this, so I kind of think ahead. Is there a favorite character that everyone's going to want to see? I want to make sure you can see most of that character on top. So that's really the only thing I really worry about. So in this case, if you see, if I fold this in half, see that? You're only getting legs and bodies and stars, but you're not getting any heads. So I definitely want this piece to be on the bottom, and I want this piece to be on the top. And I would do the same with this one. So this is how I'm going to put it together. And let me pick my zipper. I kind of think I want a yellow zipper for this one. And let me grab my scissors to true that up. All right, so we're going to true this up so that it lines up perfectly. It just makes it easier when you're at the machine to have everything lined up perfectly. All right, so I'm going to sandwich my first side of the zipper. So I'm going to just lay the zipper on top like this, so it's right side zipper to right side fabric. And then I'm going to take my lining and put it right side down, and now I've made a sandwich. So I've got a right side, a zipper, and a lining, and I want them all to line up right along the edge. And we're going to pretty much have 1/4 inch seam allowances for this entire project. Doing this sandwich zipper is my favorite thing for purses, bags, lots and lots of projects. So I love a good sandwich zipper. It's super fast and easy. It's the first zipper I always taught my students. And I'm just making sure everything lines up on the edge, putting a couple pins in it to hold it. Make sure the pin goes all the way through both layers. And once that's pinned up, and about 4 pins for something that's only 9.5 inches long is plenty. So this is how it's pinned, and you notice I pinned with the head of the pin hanging off, because actually when I sew this, I'm going to sew with the right side fabric up, the lining down, and we're just going to straight stitch right along that edge. So that's my next step. It's already time to go to the sewing machine. Alright, so I have my zipper foot on. My needle position is all the way to the left. I've taken out my pin already, but there was a pin in there. I've got my sandwich, and I'm just going to line this up and take like 2 stitches. Always when you start to sew, make sure your tails are under your foot and pushed off to the side so they don't get pulled down in the machine or caught. So that's just good sewing habit to start. Once I've taken a stitch or 2, I will go ahead and back up. You always want to back stitch on fabric. You don't want to back stitch into the air. And the worst part is right by the head. I'm not going to hit it. It's actually right next to the foot. But it will pull the fabric a little bit. You might sometimes get a little lump of fabric. And the reason I sew with the interfaced piece on top is because it's the most stable. If I put the piece without interfacing on top, it will stretch it. And when we get to the end, these won't be even. So I'm just going to let my foot ride along. I forgot to close my bobbin door, and my machine's telling me. Pull the pins as I go. When I get to the end here, I'm going to backstitch. Alright. Now let me put my foot down. On this machine I can actually trim my threads. Raise my foot, and now my threads are already trimmed on that end. And then when I open this up, there's my zipper. Now ideally I would like a little bit longer zipper when I do this as a personal preference, but I have so many zippers left over from my sewing classes that I'm using up what I have. So there's zipper side 1. I'm going to now pin and do the exact same thing to this side. So I'm going to make another sandwich. Sandwich part 2. I just make sure that these pieces are pulled down out of the way, and I'm going to make sure I have the one I want on top, the one with the faces, and I do, and that's going to be my top layer. And actually I can see, I don't know if you can see this, can you see it's not quite lined up? I'm going to trim that off real quick. Alright, trimmed off that excess, or most of it that was hanging off, and now I can make my sandwich. And the nice thing is I can make sure this side is lined up together. So it gives me lots to keep me accountable and on track. And we're going to pin again, just like we did before. And stitch it one more time. I'm all pinned together. I'm coming back to my presser foot. Again, I want to make sure, if you notice I trimmed my threads with my machine so I don't have a bobbin thread showing. So I'm going to make sure my top thread is pulled over. Take a couple stitches. Now this time I'm sewing, the first time I started with the head end, and this time I'm starting with the tail end, and here's the big metal stopper. I can feel it right there. You never want to hit that thing, it'll break a needle for sure, but we're far enough away that we're not going to have to worry about it. Now if you're having a hard time getting too close to your zipper, you can actually move your needle position over a little to the right. You have to be careful not to hit your center bar, but you can move your needle position over if it helps you. You just don't want to get too narrow of a seam allowance, because this is at the zipper, there's a lot of wear and tear and pull, and you want a little bit of seam allowance to give you stability in your bag. Here's the head. right at the end. Back stitch. Trim my threads. Raise my foot. And now you can see there's the zipper. And this is the lining side. So from the inside, it looks like that. And from the outside, it looks like that. All right, our next step, I'm going to take off the zipper foot now and put on a regular sewing foot. Almost pulled my thread out. And I'm just going to go with a straight stitch foot. If I don't, that's all I'm doing. I want to make sure and put my needle position back in the center. All right, so the battery died mid-foot change, so you'll notice I have a different manicure now. That's what I did while I was charging my battery. Okay, so we're going to get back on track. I've got my straight stitch foot on. You can use any regular sewing foot. You just don't want your zipper foot for this. And I have taken my little bag that currently has got the zipper installed. So the zipper is finished on the inside and the outside, on the lining side and the right side. And I'm going to fold together just the outer fabrics, which are the ones with the interfacing on them. And I'm going to line them up. And that's next. And again, we're doing this at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And get this lined up. You want to make sure your threads are under the foot. This foot is a 1/4 inch wide, so when I line up the edge of my fabric with the foot, I am at a 1/4 inch. Tap my foot. All right. Now for the lining, we're going to do something similar. We're going to sew the two lining pieces together, and you'll notice that when you fold them in, they are now right sides together, so you can see this is the one I just finished. But on the lining, we want to leave a hole for turning through when we finish the bag. So I'm going to sew a few inches on each end, about 3. I want to leave about a 3-inch hole, and this is 9.5 long, so if I do 3, 3, and 3, I'm going to get pretty close. So I'm going to sew that next, and do back stitch when you start and stop, even around the hole, because when you go to turn, it'll just start pulling out, and we don't want that. And if it makes it easier for you, you can put pins in and mark where to start and stop. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. I'm not using my knee lift because I've got the tripod in the way, and I'm not used to raising and lowering my foot this way. And you can tell I'm clumsy. I much prefer the knee lift. There we go. All right, so our bag has got all of its long parts sewn together. Here's the hole where I'm going to turn it through. Now, the next step, you have options on. I'm going to go ahead and trim this thread. You can just go ahead and finish the bag and not add the elastic strap, but we're doing the elastic strap, so I want to show you how to do that part next. All right, for the elastic strap, I'm just going to set these up here so you can see. I have a whole bag full of elastics here, but these come from Hobby Lobby. This is Hobby Lobby. These are Joann's, and this is actually fold over elastic. It has a little line down the middle that you can fold over, but I like this elastic because it's super, super cute. So a lot of them have a little bit of a sparkle to them. This one has hearts on it. This one's just a sparkly bright green. I've got, let me pull out this pink one here that's got a ruffled edge. Aren't those cute? So you can use plain elastic. Plain elastic is fine. This is cuter. And it only takes, 9.5 inches is what you're going to cut this at. So it doesn't take a lot. You can get quite a few. This one came with 1 yard. So when you think you're cutting it at 9 inches, so you can get quite a few out of this. Okay, so I have to just pick my color. We're going to cut it 9 inches long, and I'll show you how to apply that. So here is my pretty little purple ribbon. And I'm going to now take my bag that I've sewn together, and it looks like this. There's a zipper in the middle. Here's the outer fabric, here's the inner fabric. And I'm going to unzip it part of the way. It just helps to work with it if it's slightly unzipped too. You give yourself all the options you can. So now we're going to fold this. Oops, I have another thread. We're going to fold this in on itself. So here's my zipper. And here's my seam. I'm going to pull my seam open. I'm just going to finger press it. Okay, so I'm going to take this and we're going to make this little flat sandwichy thing. Open it up. It's going to go like this on top of itself. We're lining up seams and zipper. So we're just going to press this open. Finger press it open like that so that our seam is nice and open, because if you do this it makes it flatter. It's just nicer to work with. And I'm going to line that right up on top of my zipper, and then I'm going to do the same thing down here. Get everything lined up, make sure all of our seams are open and on top of each other, and I'm going to just put a pin in to hold it. Now I'm not putting a pin in the center part because that's where the elastic goes. So the elastic is going to slide inside here. So I'm going to just poke it in, and the other side's open so I can grab it, pull it through. So now I'm going to lay my elastic. So we've got all these little layers, and you want to make sure the pretty side of the elastic is out, because that's how it's going to be when we flip our bag around. So we're going to put the elastic inside on top of the seam, center it on the seam as best you can, and it's pretty easy because these fold over elastics have a line right down the middle, so we can line that right up. And then we're going to just line all of our layers back up and pin it. So here's all of the layers: bag, elastic, the zipper layer, a lining layer. Okay, now this is the one where we stick a pin in, and I do my best to line it up like that. Alright, and there's our pin. And then we're just going to pull it straight and pin down here. And then we're going to go do the same thing on the other side. Now you can cut your elastic 9 inches, which gives it just a little, makes it a little bit shorter and makes it a little stretchier, or cut it at 9.5. That's kind of up to you. I cut mine, if you look, can you see inside there? Mine's just a little bit shorter, so I'm going to pull. I did that on purpose. I just like to make it a little stretchier. I just think it works a little better when you're, I'm finger pressing here, when you're putting it around your notebook. So I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in this to hold it on this side. And now I'm going to bring in my zipper. And if you cut it shorter, it does pull on your bag just a tiny bit, so you just have to pay attention to it. Bring in the zipper on each side. Sorry, I'm doing this around the camera, so I'm a little clumsy because I have the camera sitting sort of in my lap. I'm going to just stick pins in as I go, and then I'll repin once I have all the layers down. And you can look and see, make sure you've got your zipper lined up right. Alright, and now we're ready to bring down our last layer. And finger press this open. Of course, you can machine press all of this. You just want to be careful not to press these outer edges. You only want to press the inner, which is why I haven't done it. It's a little trickier to press, but can be done. And laying that right on top, so all of my seams are lined up. Yay! All right. And now I'm going to put a few more pins in. Okay, look at all those pins, but it's holding everything together, so I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to turn my machine back on. This is really easy. We're just going to sew straight across. You want to make sure you keep your seam pressed open. Here's my little hole for turning later. See that? So we're going to just backstitch, sew straight across and backstitch. I'm going to flip it over because I like to sew with the stable side up. And these, if this edge isn't perfect, it doesn't really matter that much as long as you're catching all your layers. You just don't want it to be too sloppy so that you end up with little lumps or something in your bag. I like to give a good back stitch on those corners. And again at about 1/4 of an inch. Now if you're sewing with a longer zipper, hold on here, I'm getting a little fold over, there we go. If you're sewing with a longer zipper, your zipper tail may be hanging out here, and after you sew this is when you can cut it off. And you just want to make sure that you're sewing past the metal parts, that you're not hitting any metal. You can sew right through the nylon zipper though. Oh, didn't take out my pin. There's one. Flip it around and do the other side. Same way. Thing I'm really watching is just that this doesn't flip over, so I'm going to use my pin on top as I get close. There we go. Now it's under the toes. Okay, this bag is practically done. So here we are. Now I'm going to move the camera just so you can see turning a little easier because we're a little too close up. So here's our finished bag. You can see our sandwiched ends. This is what it looks like, and before I turn it, I'm going to go ahead and just finger press this a little bit like this, just to keep it flat. And remember, I already pulled our zipper open. So next is time for a haircut. Give any little threads that are hanging out that look ugly. You can't see it, it's on the inside, but you know, a mark of a good seamstress or sewist is someone who does things like trims up their threads. So now we're going to open our little hole, and depending on what we're doing, like if I pull handles, I said we're turning a snake inside out, so this is a little bit like giving birth to your bag here. But I've got my hole opening, and can you see that? I've also got the zipper open about that far. And since the zipper's open, I can open it even farther. Having the zipper open actually makes it easier to turn. So now I'm going to put my fingers in all the way through to the right side of the bag. So here's the right side of the bag. I'm putting my thumb into this corner and pushing it through. And once you get a right side through, you just start flipping. Just be gentle. You don't want to pull against any seams, and that's why you don't want to make your hole too small, because it can make it a little hard to pull through. You can end up tearing your fabric or ripping your seams out, which is no fun. Alright, so I'm partially turned around. So see, it's actually flipped around. Not all the way, but partially flipped around. So I'm only going to flip it to the lining side for now, because I have a hole to sew shut. So we don't have to worry about our corners too much. You can though, if this is your first time making the bag, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Flip all the way around so you can check your work out before you sew it shut. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to flip this all the way around. Flip our elastic around to the correct side. So there's our little bag. Zips. And that's what the lining's like. So now what we have to do is sew this little hole of the lining shut. And you can do it with the bag already turned around. It works the same pretty much. You just have to make sure you keep the bag out of the way. So we're pulling the lining up away from the rest of the bag so it's not touching anything else. And I'm pinching together the little hole edges, the lips of the hole. And I'm going to put a pin. I'm going to mark, this is the edge, this is where I started and stopped, so I want to know that. I want to know where to start and stop to finish this so I don't end up with any little holes. Here's the other end. So these are kind of letting me know where to start and stop. And then I'm going to put one in the middle, and the one in the middle shows me, just holds it together. So now we're going to go sew that shut. We're going to just do a little top stitch real close to the edge on the sewing machine. We're back at the machine, and we're putting this really close to the edge. Now I've got my straight stitch foot, and it has marking, so this is a 1/4 inch all the way out here, but if I put on the outside of the toe, the inside of the toe, I get an 1/8 inch. And of course, with this, you can't move your needle position, so you want to be careful and keep your needle straight, but that's where I'm going to start. Pull out this pin, and I want to sew about 1/8 of an inch, really pretty close to the edge. You just want to make sure you're catching your both edges of your opening. Do back stitch. And if you don't pin this, it's easy for the underneath layer to slip behind, and you won't be able to tell that you didn't catch it until you're done, and you have to redo your little hole. And that is it. The bag's done. So let's go over here and evaluate. All right, so here's the bag. I just pulled it off the machine. A couple threads to trim here. And I'm going to just poke out my corners really good all the way around. And if there's any little threads like this is actually just fabric fray, but if there's anything like that, I want to get it. And I actually have over here in my jar this thing. This is for, if you're gentle with it, poking out corners. So I'm going to use it. And you could press your bag at this point if you wanted to. All right, so there's our little bag. One more little fabric fray thing right here. And that's the finished bag. I'm going to zip it shut. That's how it looks. And this is the back. Here's our elastic all caught inside. There's our ends. Now, like I said, I like to use longer zippers. If you see this one, you can see how far I am out. I could actually have made the bag a little shorter and sewn closer to this metal piece if I wanted to. But the bag works the same either way. I just prefer to have to sew with the zipper longer than the bag, and then you don't have any of these metal pieces in it. You just have nice smooth zipper like this one. See this one? You don't see the metal parts in it because I used a longer zipper. Okay, you have just made your first adorable little pencil bag. I found my other bag that my very first one that I made. It's made with pillow ticking, and it has mustaches on the inside. These were all just leftover fabrics, but look how cute it is with this bright red zipper on it, and then on the back I just have plain black elastic. I wasn't special elastic, I just used things that I had. So here are a few finished bags. I'm just taking some shots for my Etsy shop, and I thought I would just do a quick little run through and show you some of these bags. I've got quite a few of My Little Ponies. I've got some fun ones that look like comic books. I've got a couple different Doctor Who bags, Star Wars, and Mario. I think Mario's my personal favorite. And Hello Kitty, that may be my favorite actually. I love Hello Kitty. And then I have one Shopkins left right now. So here's my little pile of bags that I'm getting ready to list on Etsy. I have Zelda more Mario, some generic video game controllers, a whole bunch of others that I haven't, that are cut but not sewn. So check that out.